Okay, this is my session after I recorded in 2 different passes. I recorded the single hits over here, and then I recorded some full drum beats with the 4 channels. So first thing I'm going to do when I go in to start editing is set up a couple of things. So the first thing I want to make sure is up here in the top left corner, I want to make sure that I'm set to grid, not to slip or spot. Make sure you're set on grid. That means that all the edits that you make will follow the grid lines. If we need to change the settings of the grid, we're going to need to go up in here, and we'll be doing that at various times. But for now, it's set to 8th note. The other thing I like to do is get myself as much screen real estate as I can. So I'm going to get rid of these side panels that I'm not going to be using now. So I'll just click that little sizing icon down at the bottom and get rid of those side panels. And I'm also going to get rid of the inserts, the sends, and the IOs, so I have as much room in the edit window as possible. So I'm going to click that little tiny white pull down icon, click off the inserts, click off the sends, click off the IO. I'm going to go up and I'm going to do a save as with a new version. Now the first thing to do is, this project is in 2 parts. We're going to make some very basic edits to the whole drum beat, and then we're going to go in and we're going to use our individual hits to make to build some beats by hand or from scratch. So the first thing I want to do is do the easy part. I'm going to work on the full drum kit. So I'm going to click with the hand or the grabber tool, which is up here. It looks like a hand. I'm going to click, hold down the shift key, and keep holding down the shift key while I click all of those the individual hit tracks, and I'm just going to hit the delete key and make them go away. Then I'm going to do another file save as, this time number 3. This is going to be the one I'm going to use to work on the full drum beats. So now the next thing to do is check out the drum beats and figure out which ones are good, which ones do we want to use. We're looking for a measure or 2 of really good timing, good playing. So I'm going to listen through my recording, and I'm going to turn the click track on. So I'm going to unmute the click track over here on the left. I'm going to listen to it, and I'm also going to zoom in. Now you can use the zoom, which is the left and right arrows, which will allow me to zoom in. You can also use command bracket left and right to zoom in or out. So I want to zoom in enough to be able to see the grid lines as they match up with the actual sounds that I recorded. And as we do this, you'll see that my first pass here is really pretty much off the beat. So let's take a listen to it. You can not only hear it, but you can see, especially if you zoom in, how much I'm not lining up with the grid lines. I want to make this thing scroll. So if you want to make it scroll while it's playing, you go to the options, edit window, scrolling, and you can either do the page, which means that when it gets to the end, it'll flip to a whole new page, or you can do continuous, which I kind of like, but I'll leave it on page for now. So you'll see, even without listening to it, that this original take is pretty off the beat. Things are not lining up with the lines very well. And you can really hear it too. I'm just scrolling it by hand as it goes along. You can see how out of sync it is. It's not very good. So I'm not going to use that. I'm going to try to find something better. So then I had kind of a misfire here. It didn't work out. And I was way off the beat again. And I stopped. Fortunately, this is better. Okay, so like around 51, 52, and 53 is about the best it gets. Yeah, 54 is not so great. 52 is probably about the best one. So I'm going to zoom back out, and I'm going to do a rough edit. So if you want to get fancy with this, you can click this bracket over the top of the 3 selection tools, and then the selection tool will take on a different icon depending on where you hold it over the waveform. So if you hold it along the bottom of the waveform, it'll be the hand grabber tool, which will allow you to move it. If you hold it over the top, you can select, and that'll allow you to delete things. And if you hold it over the end, it'll become a resize tool that looks like a bracket that you can drag. That makes it so you don't have to keep jumping up here to the top of the menu all the time to choose a different tool, because usually what we're doing is we're moving, editing, selecting, and it's really the nicest way to go. So I want to select all 4 of these tracks. We've got to remember a couple of things when we're editing. We want to make sure all these 4 tracks get edited together so that every edit you make applies to all 4 tracks so that everything stays in sync. The other thing is that we want to be making these edits lock to the grid line, because that's the whole point, is to use the grid to make sure that your edits stay synced to the tempo. So I want to go up here to the grid, and I want to set it to a full bar, because I want to go in there and make sure that my edits are actually really lined up with the bar lines. And if I use eighth notes, I'm going to be kind of having to pay a little bit too much attention. It's going to have to be more, I'm not going to be able to edit out here on this macro level. So I want to be able to do a rough edit, just edit to the beat, and then I'm going to go in and fine tune it. So with the hand tool in the lower part of each one of these waveforms, I'm going to hold down the shift key, keep holding down the shift key, and click the additional waveforms. So they're all 4 selected. And I might zoom in a little bit. Now this is not the final edit, so I'm going to just try and get close. I'm not going to really try and do it all in one shot. So in order to resize all of these waveforms simultaneously, I need to hold down the shift key and then drag with the resize tool that you get when you go to the end. And I'm going to do the same thing in from the right. Remember, 52 and 53 were the best bars. Now to keep things really tidy, I'm going to move all that stuff over to the beginning. So while they're all 4 selected, I'm just going to click and drag it over there towards the beginning so that it's all nicely in one spot. Now if I've kept these synced up and I've got grid set to the measure, all of this stuff is going to still stay locked to the grid lines. Now you'll notice that the grid lines have changed. The grid lines follow whatever the grid setting is. So if the grid setting is set to 8th note, you're going to see 8th note grid lines. If it's set to quarter note, you're going to see quarter note grid lines. Now sometimes if you have a track that doesn't always line up perfectly, but in general it's okay, sometimes you can go in and just slide the whole thing a little bit, and that would be using the slip mode. And again, with all of them simultaneously selected, get down to the bottom of one of the waveforms and use the grabber tool to just slide the waveform slightly. And you can sometimes line things up better than the player played them just by slipping things a little bit. And then once you've slipped it, you can put it back into grid mode, and now it'll be locked into the new placement. But let's just listen to how it sounds now. Okay, so this is this is the measure 52 right here. And that's the one that's got a nice tight beginning to it. So that's really the measure I want. So I'm going to do the same thing again. And I'm going to zoom in really tight just to make sure that this thing really will trim off properly, which it will. You can see the kick is starting just slightly after the beat. So it's not bad. So I'm going to zoom back out and do what I did before. Use the grabber tool with the shift key down to select all of these waveforms at one time. Then I'm going to go hover over the end of any one of these waveforms, and I'm going to click and drag. Oops, I messed up. Gotta make sure you hold down the shift key. So if you mess up, just do a Command Z and undo it. Okay, hold the shift key down, drag. Alright, what did I do wrong? Command Z. I was in slip mode. Alright, here we go. Grid is set to the bar. I'm in grid mode. I'm going to drag these 4 waveforms so that they start at the beginning of measure 2. And this one, which was measure 52 and measure 53, were the good ones. So I'm going to chop them off on the end too. Use the hand tool to move them off to measure 1 and 2. Let's check it one more time. Okay, I'm going to turn the click off at this point by hitting the mute button. One more time. Okay, so the next thing and the last thing we're going to do is again hold down the shift key, select all, make sure we're set to grid and that the grid is set to the bar. Do an Option R, which is up here in the edit window. If you don't want to use the Command key, it's up here under Edit Repeat. Edit Repeat, so Option R. Let's put in 7 more. So now we have end-to-end locked to the grid, 16 bars of the drum beat that's relatively tight. Okay, so do a save as, whatever. This is my, this is 3 drum beat. Final. I'm going to make it number 4. Okay, that's it for that project.